The Springboks versus Ireland series is about 2 months away, and Ireland are already making excuses for when they lose. Gordon D'Arcy, a legendary Irish centre, has gone on a URC roundtable and has already started making excuses for when he thinks Ireland are going to lose against the Springboks when they come down here. Now I'm going to play you exactly what Gordon D'Arcy said. I'm going to give you my opinion on what I think about it. As always, let me know what your guys' opinion is down in the comments. And if you think the Springboks are going to beat Ireland when they come down here, then make sure you smash that subscribe button, because as you know, we're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year and do the impossible, but I know we can, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let's get in and see what Gordon D'Arcy said. Now, there's absolutely no secret that there's still some unfinished business between the Springboks and Ireland. We know that coming into the 2023 World Cup, Ireland was seen as one of the favorites, and it was their time to win the Rugby World Cup. Obviously, we got put into a group with them as well as Scotland, and Ireland ended up beating South Africa in what turned out to be a little bit of a controversial game. Marnie Leborg missed a couple of kicks, Faf missed a couple of kicks, and there was a bit of a dodgy maul call right at the end. But nevertheless, the Springboks lost to Ireland in the group stages. The Springboks would go on to win the Rugby World Cup, as we know, and Ireland would fall out in the quarterfinals as they normally do against New Zealand. Now, after the World Cup, there was still a lot of Northern Hemisphere pundits saying that Ireland are still the best team in the world. A couple of South African pundits and fans hit back saying that how can that be possible, because we just played a 2-month competition to decide who is the best team in the world. But Ireland still think that they are the best team in the world. And this has obviously stirred a lot of opinions from Irish fans and South African fans, and I think it's safe to say that Irish fans don't particularly like South African fans, and South African fans don't particularly like Irish fans. Now, this is only going to get worse as the tour against Ireland gets closer and closer. Before I get into a couple of more opinions I have on this and exactly what I think, let's get into what Gordon D'Arcy said on this URC roundtable.
You have the world champions by on merit. South Africa did exactly what they needed to do in the World Cup. What I loved about the South African win was they didn't let a group match derail them. And I just thought that resilience they had was, that mental resilience and that fortitude when things got tough, that they were able to come back, and that was fantastic. But Ireland, obviously first back in. South Africa haven't played since the World Cup and won't have played straight out of the blocks, and came back to a little bit of form. And I think the season started to tell a little bit for Ireland towards the end of that Six Nations. And I think tired is probably the wrong word, but it definitely seemed like there was a lot of the same players playing an awful lot of the same matches, a couple of injuries, and another round or two in the Six Nations. They may not have had the legs to keep going. So I think Ireland are going to be tired coming down to South Africa. That said, I think there will be a couple of bodies coming back in. There'll be a couple of new faces, I would say, added into that squad. But it definitely, and we have 2 brilliant coaching tickets. So it is the people's favourite versus the actual favourite, or the people's champion versus the actual champions, maybe. I'm joking. But it's a fantastic series, and one that's it is the pick of the series, I think, for me. And I just think I hope Ireland give a good account of themselves, because we know how much travel takes out of teams on the road, being away from home after the end of a long season when you guys are getting started. But it certainly won't disappoint.
Now, there's quite a couple of things to pick apart in that statement from Gordon D'Arcy. Now, the first thing that really has ruffled me the wrong way is that he's saying that this Irish side is going to be tired coming into this series against South Africa, because they've already had their season and the South African teams are just getting started. But the South Africans have been playing in the URC and the European Cup, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the Irish team play for Leinster, if not the majority of the Irish team play for Leinster. And Leinster have just sent down a B team to South Africa so that their international players can stay in Ireland and rest up for when they have to play in the Champions Cup, which is coming up and towards the back end of the URC. So I think saying that the Irish players are going to be more tired than the South Africans is a little bit unfair. Yes, Ireland have played more test matches this year, which if you flip it on its head, could actually be a massive advantage for Ireland, because the last time South Africa played was in a World Cup final against New Zealand, and they're only going to play one test match before they face Ireland, and that is against Wales on the 22nd of June. And as we know, more than half the Springbok team that played in the World Cup final is not going to be available for that test match. So that Wales test match isn't a warm-up test match for Ireland, because we're not going to have the team that's going to be playing against Ireland for that Welsh test match. That's going to be very much a very young South African side, very inexperienced South African side playing against Wales, because the majority of the Springboks are not going to be available because of that test match being outside of the international break, meaning that players who play in UK clubs, Ireland, France, players that make it into the semi-finals or final of the URC, so probably the Bulls and the Stormers, are not going to be available. So I think it is a little bit unfair what Gordon Darcy is saying, that first of all, the Irish players are going to be more tired than the South Africans, and secondly, I think it's a bit more of an advantage that Ireland have played in the Six Nations this year. The Six Nations started on the 2nd of February. Their last game in the World Cup was on the 14th of October last year, and then their last game in the Six Nations was on the 16th of March. So they had those 5 games in the Six Nations to sort of figure out a bit of a game plan moving forward. They knew the South African series was coming up, right? So they've probably developed a couple of systems in that time period. The Springboks have had one alignment camp in person and one virtual alignment camp, which is coming up. That's as much as the South Africans have got together since the Rugby World Cup final. The only other time is going to be against Wales, but like I said, a lot of those players that played in the Rugby World Cup final aren't going to be available. So it's going to be a South African side that is coming to play one of the best teams in the world, if not the best team if you're speaking to Irish fans, and they haven't played for a good 8 months together. So it is a bit of a... It just depends which side of the coin you look at. If you're Irish, you're looking at it like these Irish players are going to be tired after a long season. The Six Nations, Leinster making it into the Champions Cup final, making it into the URC final. Or you can look at it as Ireland have had a long time together to really figure out a system to try and beat the Springboks again. And don't forget that Ireland are somewhat of the Springboks bogey team. We haven't beaten Ireland in a very, very long time. And I just think the pundits overseas as well as South Africa, we can't come into this series making excuses for why the Springboks are going to lose or for why Ireland's going to lose. These are the 2 best teams in the world that are going to clash for 2 games after all the World Cup drama, after who's the best team in the world. And we're really going to have to knuckle down and see who is the best team in the world. Yes, granted, South Africa are playing at home. So if they lose, I do think Ireland fans and pundits will say it's because it's very difficult to go and win in South Africa. And I'm not naive to that fact. South Africa definitely have the advantage coming into this home ground advantage. But Ireland have had a lot more games since the Rugby World Cup to play with each other. A lot of them play for the same team, being Leinster. So a lot of the advantage does fall with Ireland in terms of timing, in terms of strategy, and in terms of system. So I do agree with what Gordon Darcy said there, and I think especially as pundits and as YouTubers, we have to be careful not to make excuses before the time, because we want the 2 best teams to go at it to see who is the best team in the world after all of that World Cup drama. So as always, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Make sure you leave this video a like, and if you haven't, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy. Peace.